Hello and welcome to Scotland at 7 on Friday, the 5th of November. I'm Hugh Stewart. Good evening. Now, before today's news, let's first of all look at the coronavirus numbers issued by the Scottish Government today. We have 25 deaths, unfortunately, although that is 8 fewer than yesterday. At 2 pm today, the Scottish Government released these figures. There were 2,389 cases of COVID 19 reported, which is a drop of 434 from yesterday. 59 people are in intensive care as a result of COVID 19, and that's compared to 63 yesterday, so another small decrease there. Another 1,413 people have received their second vaccination, bringing the total up to 3,912,518. Also, 33,572 have now had the third or booster jag. Now, today, the big story at COP26 was a Young Person's Day, and we'll be covering, first of all, what happened in Glasgow with the protests, and we'll also be looking at the Young Person's agenda in the COP26 campus itself over at Finnieston. Now, COP26 today, Greta Thunberg, of course, began her famous Friday's school strike 2 years ago, and today she was joined in Glasgow by thousands of young climate campaigners who marched and rallied in Glasgow, Scotland's largest city. Campaigners have been underwhelmed by the commitments made so far at the COP conference centre on the other side of town. "If you were smarter, I'd be at school," read one placard seen today. Another said, "The world is changing, why aren't we?" Greta Thunberg is one of those not impressed by the COP so far, suggesting yesterday that the talks are becoming a greenwashing campaign for politicians and business leaders. It would be more of a success, she said, if people understood what a failure it has been. Today in Glasgow, Ms Thunberg said that we don't need any more empty promises or commitments that are full of loopholes. Our leaders are not leading. The youth rally today marched through Glasgow and was addressed by several speakers. Ms Thunberg was also joined by Vanessa Nakate, the Ugandan activist, who provided first-hand evidence of the actual climate harms which people are feeling in her country. People are dying, children are dropping out of school, people's farms are being destroyed, she said. We are in a crisis, we are in a disaster that is happening every day. President Biden, of course, was here in this city a few days ago, and today in Washington, Congress was due to vote on his $555 billion Build Back Better package of measures aimed at halving greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and taking measures to adapt to climate change. More on Youth Day at COP later. Another story that reached us tonight: heavy flooding in Bosnia. Heavy rain overnight caused severe flooding in the Bosnian capital Sarajevo, causing power blackouts. People were evacuated from retirement homes and private houses in part of Sarajevo, around the Bosnia and Tilava rivers, and in other towns in southern Herzegovina. The government for the Sarajevo canton met an emergency session, while the power company said it was uncertain when power would stabilise, with many disruptions to the grid. Most parts of Sarajevo were earlier on today without electricity. Floods and landslides also struck other parts of the country as heavy rainfall fell. Roads were blocked, school classes were cancelled, and the Messer plant, which fills oxygen tanks for COVID-19 patients, was, according to local media, completely submerged by floodwaters. Moving back to Glasgow now, to Scotland, free bus travel for under-22s was announced today. 61% of young people say that public transport is central to combating the climate emergency. Under 22-year-old residents in Scotland will all have access to a free bus pass from the 31st of January 2022. It was announced by Nicola Sturgeon. According to research from Transport Scotland, almost two-thirds of young Scots agree that public transport will play a central role in the fight against climate change. This announcement was made today at Glasgow Caledonian University by the First Minister to mark Youth and Empowerment Day at COP26. This change means that 930,000 young people across Scotland will benefit from free bus travel from next January. Research suggests that 70% of young people would use public transport if it was free. A bus decarbonisation task force has been convened, bringing together bus operators, the supply chain, and financiers to co-design the pathway to a fully zero emissions bus fleet. The First Minister said, "The extension of free bus travel to all those under 22 will improve access to education, leisure and work, while supporting the adoption of sustainable transport behaviours early in their lives." Patrick Harvey, a Green Party member of the Scottish Government, said, "This transformative policy shows that our focus on tackling the climate emergency goes hand in hand with improving lives and tackling inequality. Children and young people travelling on free, modern, zero-carbon electric buses is another step towards the fairer and greener Scotland we are committed to building." Also at the announcement, Paul Davis, the President and Managing Director of Alexander Dennis, the bus manufacturer, said, "With the Scottish Government funding zero-emissions buses that are built right here in Scotland, young people can be sure their journeys will not only be smooth, clean and green, but will benefit communities through skilled jobs, apprenticeship and graduate opportunities underpinned by this investment." Staying in Glasgow now, subway hours and safety. Campaigners have been calling for the operating hours of Scotland's only subway to be extended. The Glasgow subway normally stops at 6 p.m. on Sundays, but hours have been increased for delegates during COP26. Strathclyde Passenger Transport say they have not ruled out extending the subway's hours in future. It was also reported today that Glasgow faces a shortage of taxi drivers. Eleanor Soper from the Young Women's Movement Scotland said that opening the underground service for longer could help women feel more safe. "It just makes sense," said Ms Soper. "It's an easy way to travel. It's more accessible and more affordable than some of the other modes of transport. Frankly, everyone needs this. It is ridiculous. Nothing closes early on a Sunday, and neither should the subway." The Glasgow subway, which was built in 1896, is currently undergoing its first major revamp in over 30 years. Glasgow MSP Pauline McNeill said extending the subway's hours was an urgent priority. Polish woman died in pregnancy because of abortion laws. Isabella was in her 22nd week of pregnancy, knowing that the fetus she carried showed numerous defects. When she died of septic shock after doctors, following the new abortion laws of Poland, had to wait until the baby's heart stopped beating. Isabella had already said in a text to her mother, "Thanks to the abortion law, there's nothing I can do. They'll wait till it dies or something begins, and if not, I can expect sepsis." Isabella's mother Barbara told TVN24, "How could such a thing happen to her in hospital? After all, she went there for help." Poland's ruling Law and Justice Party said that the constitutional ruling on abortion had nothing to do with Isabella's death, blaming it on a mistake by doctors. However, activists say the ruling has made doctors scared to terminate pregnancies, even when the mother's life is at risk. The family's lawyer, Jolanta Buzowska, said Isabella's heart stopped on the way to the operating theatre and she died despite efforts to resuscitate her. Ms Buzowska has started legal action against the hospital, but also said that the death was a consequence of the verdict, referring to a constitutional court ruling in Poland from October 2020, which said that terminations on the grounds of fetal defects are unconstitutional. And now a new Scottish Government Advisory Council on environmental priorities. The First Minister has convened a new group of international experts who have the task of advising the Scottish Government on environmental issues, and they have today published their first report. Presented at COP26, the report analyses Scotland's ambitions and response to the twin climate and nature crises, noting international examples of environmental action. Use of land and marine resources are among the key areas where the Council advises that further urgent action is crucial in Scotland. The First Minister met the Council today, which she co-chairs with Professor Sir Ian Boyd, former Chief Scientific Advisor to the UK Government. They were joined in person by 10 other members of the Council. The report is published as the Scottish Government launches a new website for tracking progress towards achieving its environmental ambitions. The site is designed to ensure clear and accessible information on Scotland's environmental performance is available to the public. The First Minister said, as the host country of COP26, Scotland has a unique opportunity to show leadership on the international stage. That's why we appointed independent environmental experts from around the world to advise on how we best tackle this unprecedented challenge. The group balances experience, a strong international perspective, the youth voice, and topical awareness at the highest global level. Its first report sets out the areas of immediate priority which will help inform the actions we are taking now to tackle the crisis and our future policy direction. By measuring our progress, we can make sure we continually improve our approach. I welcome the Council's first report and look forward to working closely with its members beyond COP26 as we progress towards becoming a net zero country while restoring nature. Francesca Ozowska is the Chief Executive of Nature Scot, which is Scotland's nature agency. And Francesca said, the link between nature and climate can't be underestimated, with nature-based solutions delivering 30% of the carbon reductions needed globally. Ongoing efforts to restore peatlands, increase woodlands and protected natural areas, and develop natural capital initiatives are all highlighted in the panel's first report. We look forward to this panel continuing to help as we step up work to restore Scotland's nature, adapt to unavoidable climate change, and achieve net zero by 2045. The First Minister's Environmental Council is a newly established advisory group made up of 14 international experts. Members include leading scientists, climate and nature professionals. The main purpose of this council is to advise the government on international best practice and keep Scotland at the forefront of tackling the climate emergency and ecological decline. Now we turn to Brexit food shortages. UK ministers must take their heads out of the sand, an SNP spokesperson said today. The SNP has demanded that UK ministers take their heads out of the sand and act to reduce the trading burden for business and prevent the availability of food being reduced further. A report on Brexit today from the UK's National Audit Office, the NAO, found that action is needed on bringing in import controls to reduce the burden on business and to resolve the position for Northern Ireland. This report comes out as the UK post-Brexit transition period comes to an end, bringing with it increased border checks and administrative rules. The NAO recommends that the UK government provides support for traders to help them adapt to the new post-Brexit trade rules as they are introduced. The report stresses that traders need to know what they will have to do and when, or the flow of food will be interrupted. According to the NAO, most systems are on track, but not all. These delays are due to the new import rules which the UK government had intended to bring back in January of this year when the UK formally left the European Union. Lack of preparation, however, meant that the deadline for the new border controls was pushed back 3 times. Most controls will be brought in between January and July of 2022. Commenting on this, Alan Smith, Member of Parliament, said, Responsibility for the issues traders are facing at the borders almost a year on from the end of the transition period lies squarely at the feet of Tory ministers who promised the world and who have delivered nothing. He added, Scottish businesses are still dealing with unnecessary and costly bureaucracy at the border because of a Brexit we didn't vote for. Mr. Smith concluded by arguing that in the context of UK government complacency and incompetence, the only way to protect our economy and industry is to become an independent country within the EU. So turning now to Youth Day today at COP26. Young climate leaders came together here in Glasgow today with negotiators, officials and ministers from across the world to demand action and prevent catastrophic climate change in our lifetimes. The day was chaired by Youngo, the official children's and youth constituency of the United Nations. A statement was released representing the views of 40,000 young climate leaders from across the world, showing their priorities on climate finance, mobility, transport and wildlife. COP26 President Alok Sharma said, Wherever I have been in the world, I have been struck by the passion and commitment of young people to climate action. The voices of young people must be heard and reflected in these negotiations here at COP. The actions and scrutiny of young people are key to keeping 1.5 alive and creating a net zero future. I am also aware of the fear and anxiety many of them feel about the future of the planet, including my own children. Ending the day, President Sharma and Italy's Minister of Ecological Transmission, Roberto Cingolani, discussed the manifesto developed by 400 young people at the Youth for Climate Driving Ambition Summit, which was held at Milan this September. Now turning to the Owen Paterson resignation, more on that today. It was reported that Scottish Tories feel undermined by the UK government's rapid U-turn on the support for Owen Paterson. Scotland has 6 Conservative MPs at Westminster. Earlier this week, 4 of them voted to back the now resigned MP Owen Paterson, who had been found egregiously in breach of Parliament lobbying rules. The other 4 of the 6 did not vote. One of those, the Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross, said, I'm glad the right decision has now been reached, although it should never have happened in the first place. However, referring to the earlier 3-line whip to support Paterson, one Scottish Tory source said of the UK government, with friends like these, who needs enemies? Other Scottish Conservatives pointed out that this affair would hamper their ability to challenge the SNP government over any questionable behaviour. Although I should point out that we at Broadcasting Scotland are not aware of any accusations of financial impropriety by any member of the Scottish Government or the Scottish Parliament. Members of Parliament and MSPs must, of course, declare any gifts or funding from outside persons or bodies. Earlier this year, the UK Prime Minister Johnson had a near week-long holiday in the Spanish resort of Marbella. This was paid for by the family of Zach Goldsmith, an environmentalist, who had been a Conservative MP and is now in the unelected House of Lords. Downing Street revealed that the Prime Minister has, in line with transparency arrangements, recorded this gift but would not say how much it would cost. In this case, the rules define the Prime Minister's trip as a gift from a fellow minister, and so is not subject to the same rules as those applying to members of Parliament. Now turning to fireworks safety, and we first of all heard of a story today of a gas leak in Cumbernauld. A significant gas escape was detected today in Cumbernauld, where the gas pipeline company, SGN, had to set up an exclusion zone around Library. Engineers said earlier today they could not estimate how long the repairs would take, but asked local people not to set off fireworks within the area. A spokesman said, If you live within the exclusion, it's really important that no fireworks are set off for safety reasons. And what are the firework rules? The Scottish Government earlier issued changes to the fireworks safety rules to ensure that pyrotechnics do not fall into the wrong hands. These rules cover the selling of fireworks, including preventing people from buying too much at one time, and also created a criminal charge of adults buying fireworks by proxy on behalf of children. There's also restrictions on the times and places where fireworks can be set off. So if you are using fireworks tonight, if you're having any firework fun, please be very careful. Pay attention to the safety instructions. I always used to keep a bucket of water handy in case of mishaps. So that's all we have for tonight on Scotland at 7. There will be more coverage, of course, of COP. Our roving reporters will be out on the streets again through the second week of the COP conference here in Glasgow. Now, I'd like to finish off by once again reminding you that all of us at Broadcasting Scotland are here because of our commitment to independent broadcasting for Scotland, located and sourced right here in Scotland. And if you would like to contribute, then you can help us to make more programmes by looking at the link below. So, well, that's it for me tonight. So we'll be back with the Full Scottish on Sunday and more COP coverage from Glasgow next week. So I'm Hugh Stewart. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you later. Now, just have a look at this short video.
What distinguishes Broadcasting Scotland from a website or blog, apart from our brilliant programmes?
Hi there, I'm Gordon Ross.
Are the costs we face to enable us to produce those programmes. These costs are significant and ongoing. However, our facilities are able to do so much more if only we had the staff. In the last year, some of our supporters have cancelled their subscriptions. In one way, we would prefer it if it was because they didn't like us, rather than it being because of the financial pressures which we are all under because of COVID. The really positive outcome of our fundraiser is that at a time of economic challenge in Scotland, we will use your donations to create jobs and in a small way contribute to improving the Scottish economy. If you want us to be Scotland's independent broadcaster, able to provide an alternative mainstream television platform, then please support us.
Scotland is going to be an independent country.
Just imagine what we could do if we had even 1% of the BBC Scotland channel's budget. Imagine. And then please consider turning your imagination into reality. Please support us if you can afford it.